Don't let a DUI charge ruin your life. Get a professional and confidential evaluation from our experienced team at True Heights Treatment. Our evaluations are accepted by the majority of courts in the state of Illinois and provide a comprehensive assessment of your substance use patterns and potential treatment needs. Get the help you need today and start your path to a brighter future. Contact us now to schedule your evaluation at 708-248-7039 or at thtdui.com.
The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1 at gmail.com.
Hey everyone, it's George. I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. As this episode is coming out on July 2nd. The 4th of July is my favorite holiday every year. I look forward to spending time with friends and family, and I'm sure you are as well. Before the podcast gets going, I want to give a brief introduction. I was asked to be on a panel with State Senator Pat Joyce, State Senator L.G. Sims, and my colleague Stacey Jones, LCPC from Counseling Works, in the spring, and today I'm releasing just the audio of that. But I'd also like to recommend 2 books on mental health and psychotherapy that have been influential to me as a person. The first one is Saving Talk Therapy by Enrico Ganalte. And the second one is an old one, but it's still very relevant. It's called The Psychiatric Interview by Henry Stack Sullivan. Have a great 4th of July, and I hope you enjoy the Mental Health Forum from last spring. Bye.
Jake,
we're live.
We're live. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is State Senator L.G. Sims of the 17th District. 17th District runs from the south side of the city of Chicago through the southern suburbs in rural Will and Kankakee County, along the Illinois-Indiana border, in the southern portion of the district down to Momence, Illinois. Today we're going to have a discussion on mental health. Taking care of our mental health is important, particularly during this pandemic. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to hear from some topic experts and have a wonderful discussion this evening. So now I'll turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Senator Patrick Joyce. Senator Joyce?
Thank you, Senator Sims. My name is Patrick Joyce. I'm the state senator for the Senate's 40th District, and the 40th District is comprised of the Chicago Heights, Flossmoor, and the southern Cook areas down into rural eastern Will County, most of Kankakee County that I share with Senator Sims, and a small portion of Grundy County in the southeast part. I've been in the Senate for about a year and a half. I'm looking forward to the discussion we have tonight. I've been able to meet Mr. Brassey on several occasions in Chicago Heights. I'm looking forward to meeting Stacey Jones. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Senator Sims.
Thank you, Senator Joyce. As Senator Joyce mentioned, with us today is George Brassey, a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Illinois and founder of True Heights Treatment, LLC. We've also been joined by Stacey Jones, an LCPC, licensed clinical professional counselor, LMHC, licensed mental health counselor, CDVP, certified domestic violence professional, who has many degrees and certifications. So we know she's very qualified. Who specializes in anxiety, parenting, trauma, and PTSD. We have some wonderful professionals here. We're going to have this discussion with us today. And so let's jump right into questions. Senator Joyce?
Well, if you could, we'll start with either one, George or Stacey. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what your practice does, what services you offer.
Sure. My name is George Brassey. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I also hold an MBA. I did both of my master's degrees at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois, which has got to be in one of the 2 Senate districts with the guys I'm on the phone with. Senator Joyce, wonderful. My practice, True Heights Treatment, is a small practice. There's only myself and one of my colleagues comprise the whole group. But we provide individual and couples counseling to the community, whether that's in person at our Chicago Heights location or throughout the state of Illinois using telehealth, which has been a very big change since the pandemic happened. And our practice, we're happy to announce, was recently credentialed with the state of Illinois to provide DUI evaluations to anyone in the state of Illinois that would qualify. So that's a little bit about True Heights Treatment and myself.
Stacey, how about you?
Yes, I'm Stacey Jones, and like you said, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I graduated from St. Xavier University in Chicago with my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I've been in the field for about 8 years now, and I provide individual counseling to adults, teens, primarily focusing on those who are experiencing various forms of trauma, anxiety, depression, parenting, women's issues, and I am part of Counseling Works, which is a group practice that operates out of Chicago Heights, Frankfort, and Naperville.
Well, George, you're also an alderman in the city of Chicago Heights, so I know you see a lot of these issues up close. How's the pandemic affected mental health for individuals?
The mental health system in the state of Illinois and throughout the country was already kind of on the ropes prior to the pandemic. There's been a shortage of therapists and psychiatrists for a number of decades. The pandemic really catapulted the mental health system and really has made the demand that much more. In my first year from 2018 to 2019, we only had about 80 to 90 people come through who were just local patients. In the years since March of last year, we've had almost double that number of patients come through. So the pandemic has caused a huge increase in the demand for services in the state of Illinois and throughout the country.
Well, and Alderman, thank you for laying out that increase in patients struggling with mental health, and thank you for your service, Senator Joyce.
Well, and Stacey, have you seen the same thing as far as how the pandemic has affected, your practice?
Absolutely. Seeing that people are struggling with daily life stressors, right? Kids and bills and things like that. And then you throw in the uncertainty of the pandemic. You throw in isolation from family and friends and supports. And that increases feelings of worry and fear and sadness. Many people have lost loved ones, so grief and loss without those supports that we're typically used to having during more normal times. So absolutely, the amount of people seeking services and needing support has just grown exponentially.
Well, you mentioned a lot of signs, and because of that, I mean, you both as professionals can see the signs of people that are struggling with some where they might need to seek help. From my perspective, my family, friends, how would you be able to identify if someone is in need of some assistance? Either one of you.
One thing that you can pay attention to, I would say, is behavioral changes. So maybe withdrawing from family or friends or regular activities that they used to enjoy. Excessive sleeping or maybe not sleeping at all, changes in eating habits, increased drug or alcohol use, expressing feelings of hopelessness and excessive worry that is hard to control. Comparing of physical ailments that don't really seem to have an actual physical cause. So lots of headaches, migraines, stomach aches, ulcers, things of that nature. Things that we would probably think of as more common, but if it's impacting their ability to function normally, then that might be a bigger concern.
Sure. Senator Sims? Or no, George, go ahead.
Stacey mentioned the increased consumption of alcohol and drugs. I just read an article in the newspaper today that the amount of drug and alcohol use has almost doubled in the last year in our country. So it's definitely a contributing factor that is causing a lot of people to consume more alcohol as the pandemic and social isolation and everything that comes with it.
Now, and you know what? And George, as you and Stacey were both talking, I think about, and Stacey, you mentioned the isolation and the feelings of hopelessness. That's not unique to any one demographic. It could be young people, it could be middle-aged people, it could be older people. You have individuals who, as the pandemic were starting, individuals who may not have, maybe single, and they were looking to engage and have relationships, but they weren't able to do that during the pandemic, and it's very, very difficult and stressful. What tips and this is for both of you. What tips would you have for individual whose mental health have been negatively impacted during the pandemic?
One thing that I would start off with is if that individual is employed still, if his or her job has not been impacted by the pandemic, it's really valuable for them to look into their health insurance policy and see what kind of coverage there is. Because of the Affordable Care Act, all mental health services are covered at some level. It cannot be discriminated against. So just looking into that can remove a lot of barriers to care that people may have or perceive they have. Another thing that if they're still employed, most major corporations and companies have what are called EAPs, and their employee assistance programs, which is a defined benefit which can help connect the employee with a counselor in the community. And these, I believe, are actually going to be the future of mental health care in our country. But those are two things I would suggest right away, is to look into the benefits and see what's covered, because almost every insurance policy has some level of coverage for mental health care since the Affordable Care Act was passed.
Yeah, because we get into a whole new area during pandemic and going into post-pandemic. We've talked about a lot of the signs that people can look for. And if your family's never experienced any kind of mental illness, or you don't know that you're going down that road, trying to find the resources when you've never experienced before has got to be challenging. So, I mean, what type of resources are out there that people can reach out and find? You mentioned some of them just now through your own insurance, George, but any other common resources online, or if someone's seeking help?
Well, there's always there's the crisis line. There's an 800 number, and then there's the text line. Some people are more comfortable texting, so that's 741-741. NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, is a great resource, not only for those experiencing mental health challenges, but for family and friends who are trying to support them to gain more knowledge and understanding of the signs, what to look for, ways to support, and ways to connect them to whatever resources may be within their area. I also know that, a lot of people are connected with social media, and there have been a lot of initiatives through different foundations in the Chicagoland area, as well as naturally through celebrities like the Loveland Foundation and things like that provide vouchers for mental health services to connect people who may not be signed up for some type of insurance or program, or cannot necessarily afford the out-of-pocket costs right at this time. There's just so much information out there to get people connected.
Yeah, I've heard of NAMI, friend of a friend, whose son was going through some challenges, and he's now very, very involved in NAMI. And George, anything to add on resources?
I think those are all great resources. Another great resource is, like Stacey said, online. There's so much knowledge free and available about mental health out there online that you can access really at the tip of your fingertips. But I think also just going to see a therapist is a big deal in and of itself, especially in certain communities where that's more stigmatized than others.
Right. And George, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm glad we are able to have these types of conversations, because for so long, mental health was stigmatized, and communities did not want to talk about mental health. Somehow, if you talk about mental health, you were somehow weak. But the brain is the strongest muscle that we all have. So Stacey, can you talk to us a little bit about the stigma of mental health and how that's changed over time, and why it's so important that we are in this moment?
It definitely has changed, and it is a welcome and a needed change for us to eliminate the stigma, to make mental health a normal part of your conversation with your family and friends, to check in with people with how they're doing. Doing that goes a long way, because those struggling with mental health issues, like you mentioned, there's this view that they are weak, or, they're not able to handle their problems, or so on and so forth. And so there's shame involved in that. And there's also feelings of being alone. So having that be a normal part of your family discussion, your friend group discussion, creates kind of a safe space for people to share some of the concerns that they're going with, so that you will know what someone's going through and you can help connect them to the appropriate resources. But absolutely, I think media, with all of its challenges, has also been a great source of kind of opening that up and showing how much we all have in common with the fact that we struggle, or we know someone who may have struggled with mental health concerns.
And George, how about as we talk about this concept of strength or conversely weakness? How about are you seeing more men come into and take advantage of mental health services? Because that's been a large part of the stigma for a long time, that men won't go to counseling because it's that sign of weakness. Are you seeing more men start to take advantage of these services? And if not, are there recommendations that you might have for them to utilize services, et cetera?
So as a male therapist, we usually do end up seeing a lot more men, just because there's maybe a recognition or a deeper level of comfort a client may have. But yes, I am seeing an increase in male clients. For example, when I mentioned working with a lot of the employee assistance programs, oftentimes that's how men come through, because a lot of the EAP programs partner with like major corporations who have a lot of blue collar work, and working class people come through and get treatment that way. So I am seeing an increase in the amount of men and the amount of people looking for services, period.
It seems like the word isolation and the word of being alone. And when you think about what the pandemic has done across our country and across the world, and it's a perfect storm for having issues in mental health. And I'm encouraged to see where Illinois has been for the last several years, and where we're going to try to remove that stigmatism, or just trying to bring mental health to the forefront. And both of you being on this call this is what we have to do. We need to have conversations.
Absolutely. Agree.
But and you both gave us some very good resources. Stacey, you mentioned a text number that viewers could utilize, and also the NAMI website. Could you give those to us again, please?
So the NAMI website, I believe it's www.nami.org. Don't quote me on that though.
But that's NAMI, right?
Yes, NAMI. And that can connect you wherever you are in the country to information about mental health, and then also resources available in your area. And then the crisis text line is 741-741.
Okay. Yeah, that was the one because as we hear, particularly, I talked about earlier, the younger people. The pandemic was particularly difficult for young people who felt that isolation. As they're starting to transition to, when they're in school, they have their social networks, and if they did not, they were isolated from those social networks, and oftentimes they need those. They're certainly more attuned to using text messages than I am. So that's a useful, certainly a useful tool for them.
Well, and one thing when you mentioned that, Senator Sims, the more comfortable people are with technology, the more comfortable they may be with seeing somebody over technology. I'm not sure about Stacey, but prior to March of last year, I'd never done an online session, and ever since March of last year, it's been primarily online. So
telehealth in your field and in the medical field it's transformed during pandemic. It's absolutely necessary, and I think it's an opportunity that we can get more people involved in seeing therapists through this media.
Well, the great thing is I can be here in Chicago Heights, but I could see a patient in Springfield or Decatur or Peoria. It widens the ability for people to get services, and if you're licensed in the state of Illinois, you're licensed in all of the state of Illinois.
Good point.
Absolutely. Telehealth has been critical to providing these services, not only for health and safety reasons, but logistical things like finding childcare in order to come to a therapy session, or having adequate transportation, or finding the time within your evening, because now you have to help the kids do their homework or you have to cook dinner. But I have this 1 hour lunch break in the afternoon. You could, use your cellular device and log right on and have your therapy session during that time. So opening it up, like George was saying, absolutely, telehealth has been fantastic in connecting people to mental health services.
Well, Senator Sims brought up education, and have either of you had any interaction with any of the school districts and challenges that, all the students are used to and need that interaction, that daily fix of one-on-one contact, and it presents a lot of problems, and back again to isolation. Have either of you had any interactions with school districts and challenges there?
I can't say that I've had interaction with school districts, but what I have seen personally in my practice is that increase in children and teen clients who are requesting services or whose parents are connecting them to services due to heightened anxiety surrounding the e-learning and the struggles and the challenges, where the student may have been doing fairly well, pre-pandemic, and now they're struggling to connect or grasp the material. And, my teen clients are worrying about college admissions and, how this is going to reflect. And so in that respect, working through that anxiety with them and helping them find tools and skills to navigate this has been part of the focus of my services.
The frustration of seniors not, being involved in sports. I mean, it causes anxiety. I mean, without question.
Yeah. So on top of the learning loss, now we've got the other issues that we have to deal with. And Stacey, that goes back to that discussion we were having earlier about being able and comfortable to have these discussions in this moment, because before March of last year, none of us, and George, you mentioned this point earlier also, before March of last year, none of us would have dreamt that we'd have to go to this online only environment. But now we're used to remote work and remote learning. But for those young people who are used to that interpersonal communication, who need that as they're trying to learn, now that's been taken away from them, and they're trying to figure that out. So that goes back again to eliminating that stigma of, it's okay to ask for help. We usually say to our kids, you can ask for help if you don't understand some material. But what if grasping the material is where you need the help? And that's why I'm so proud that we're able to have these really authentic conversations about mental health, and because it's necessary.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we're going to be dealing with for the next several years to come, because we don't know what long-term effects we're going to have from the last year and a half.
That's right.
Right. There's certain jobs and careers and lives that have been utterly destroyed by the pandemic, and it's going to be a challenge to get those people back to a stable state. I think of like people who work in restaurants or the entertainment industry and things like those jobs have been really impacted by the pandemic. And the COVID pandemic has really just exacerbated a lot of the deeper problems in our society and accelerated kind of the address.
Yeah, Senator Sims and I get to hear from constituents on a daily basis in those industries on what's next.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been an amazing conversation this evening. I want to thank Alderman George Brassey and Stacey Jones for their expertise and for being on the front lines in this effort to heal our communities, because that's really what this is all about: healing our communities and making sure that we provide them the resources they need. So, Stacey or George, any final thoughts?
I just want to thank Senators Joyce and Sims for asking me to come on to this panel and share whatever expertise I do have. And if you want to find more about True Heights treatment, just go to www.trueheightstx.com. We are accepting new clients, me and my associate, and we are looking to hire more therapists. So if there's anybody in the community that is licensed and is looking to work, there is a demand out there, and I would love to bring you onto the team.
Stacey, any closing thoughts?
Yes. Also, again, thank you for hosting this and allowing us to speak to this important issue. I would just tell people to know that you're not alone. This has been unprecedented. I think we've heard that word about 1 million times in the past year, but it's true. This has been an unprecedented time. There is no expectation of an optimal way to handle this. We've all struggled in one way or another. And so you're not alone in this. And there is help available and there is support available. Connect with your mental health practitioner, connect with your family and friends, reach out and seek help if you need it.
Well, we want to thank everyone who tuned in. Thank you, George, Stacey, and of course, always Senator Sims. We hope to do this again real soon. I really look forward to the future conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023.
Begin to transform your life and work towards inner peace with expert psychotherapy. At True Heights Treatment, our experienced therapists provide personalized, compassionate care to help you overcome life's challenges and reach your goals. Whether you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, or other mental health concerns, our team is here to support you. With a warm and welcoming in-person and virtual office atmosphere and a commitment to person-centered and evidence-based treatments, we are dedicated to helping you address your life's challenges. Contact us now to schedule your first session at 708-248-7039 or online at trueheightstx.com. Book your appointment today and start your journey towards a happier, healthier life.
Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.